Waffle, 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 waffle. Waffle.
Ooh. Hello, apologies for the Shan writing and or drawing, but welcome to Geek Waffle episode 4? Four? New Year, One Division, Final Space. Yeah, episode 4. Ooh, 4. 4. If I can get to 4. So this is a solo one. I'm going to do this one by myself. Gonna have a wee chat about the new Star Trek TV series Lower Decks, and just to piss off Star Trek fans, I'm also wearing a Star Wars t-shirt just on the wind up there. So I'll have a wee chat about that. I'll talk about first about my kind of background with Trek. From there, I'll discuss the show, characters, what I like about it, if I like anything at all, spoilers, all that kind of jazz, and whether or not I recommend kind of watching it. So, Trek for me, I'm a diehard geek, pretty much have been since I was a kid. Ginger guy with glasses, pretty much ended up being a geek. Back when it was kind of that cliche thing where the geek was the kind of the loser. I'm still a loser, but I'm a loser with a girlfriend and like stable job, all that kind of stuff. But I'm still in the geek category. But I don't know, like geeks are supposed to be cool. I'm just no cool. Like but anybody that's ever met me probably is quite kind of inclined to agree with that. So, self-deprecation aside, Star Trek for me was something I actually kind of grew up with. I remember watching it when I was a kid, and I'll try and keep saying M as much as possible. Love when I've got my verbal tics. But yeah, so Star Trek was something that I started watching, as it says, when I was a kid. It was Next Generation. I started watching, which is the second iteration of the Star Trek show. If for some reason you're not familiar with Star Trek and all that kind of jazz, so it went original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the current shows are Discovery and Picard. There's an original animated series as well, but I don't think that was is very well received, apart from potentially kind of die-hard Trek fans. So I would. It used to air on a Wednesday night, and I remember when I was a kid, I would kind of like I'd make sure I kind of got like my bath and stuff. So like didn't worry, I still clean myself, but like it was a ritual. I'd get my bath and then I'd kind of watch Next Generation, which was always on at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday evening, and that's pretty much what got me into kind of Star Trek Next Gen. The Adventures of Picard and his crew, set in the kind of 90s. Some of the stuff I think, at least the original first few seasons are quite kind of dated now, but it's one of these things where if you've kind of got that nostalgic love for it, then like it never gets old, kind of thing. You're always kind of willing to look past anything with rose tinted glasses, that kind of thing. So I always thought it was really kind of interesting as well. I think it's still a thing whereby you get people kind of going, "Oh, are you Star Trek or Star Wars?" Like I've always been both. Like there's never been like oh no, like Star Wars is better. Oh, Star Trek, but they're different things. Now, like obviously in recent years with the Abrams kind of versions and stuff like that, they've definitely tried to kind of action pack Star Trek, much to the chagrin of a few of my kind of friends. I like the new ones. I know that Beyond got a wee bit more traction with kind of like Trekkies and Trekkers. I think there was a lot more kind of love for Beyond. I remember at the time though actually quite liking Beyond as much as I liked the previous two. However, I went back and I actually quite like that as well. And we're getting slowly but surely kind of like hit with more and more Star Trek content. So as kind of mentioned, we've got Star Trek Discovery, which I'm yeah, like for some reason I was always referring to that as Star Trek Beyond up until recently, and then I slap myself. So it's Star Trek Discovery, and then there is Picard, and there's Lower Decks. So these are all brand new shows, but a lot of them, I say a lot of them, obviously at least two of the three, including kind of Lower Decks, is actually kind of trading off the nostalgia factor. So that can, I think, in some cases it can backfire. I think a lot of people. I enjoyed Picard. I think with me, there's an awful lot of kind of blind spots when it comes to Star Wars and Star Trek. Because I've got such a love for the franchises in general. Star Wars, for example, I still quite like watching The Phantom Menace. Still like watching Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. In recent years as well, I enjoyed I very much enjoyed the first two sequel kind of trilogy films. Last Jedi more than others, so like controversial. But also, what's it called? Revenge or Rise of the Rise of Skywalker, whatever the hell the last one was called. That's probably all the Star Wars films I've ever seen. That's the one I least liked. But anyway, I'm getting ever so slightly off topic because this is supposed to be about Star Trek and not Star Wars. I don't want to kind of annoy too many people. So, but the point I was kind of making there is even with the kind of like the flaws and stuff like in Star Trek, I still like it. I still love Enterprise. I still like Voyager, and both those series are fairly well maligned by like a lot of fans, especially some of my kind of close friends who, if they're watching this, they know who they are. And they know the score and stuff like that. So I know that they prefer like the Deep Space Nine, Next Gen era, and I'm completely and utterly I'm in the same camp as them. But as I say, anything Star Trek related, I will give a watch to, and like on some level, I will actually kind of gain enjoyment from it. So, recent kind of shows, like I very much enjoyed Discovery. I very much enjoyed Picard. I've only seen the first two seasons of Discovery, but Lower Decks it's a little bit of a weird one, and just kind of getting on to it just now. So, it's an animated series, but it's also an animated comedy. Now, it would be very kind of easy, very, very easy to Family Guy, Rick and Morty the shit out of it. Like, they could properly kind of just make it this kind of weird, like, too much a parody itself. But Lower Decks isn't quite like that. So the show itself, as it says, it's animated, which is a relative, aside from the old kind of the original series, animated series. This is, as it says, it's played a bit more for laughs, but there is a lot of kind of heart involved. So there, it takes place essentially on the Cerritos, and the Cerritos, it's just like your standard kind of run of the mill, like a Starfleet kind of vessel. But they are tasked with doing second contact. So obviously, in kind of original kind of Trek, especially the movie, like a lot of kind of people will be familiar with the term first contact, which is like when when a ship kind of comes across a planet for the first time, and they land and they make contact with the civilians, hence it being the first contact they've ever kind of had with them. Now, usually there's like a rule in like Star Trek whereby they can only really kind of do a first contact if they are a warp-based civilization. So if they've kind of reached faster than light travel, like somebody will go down and go, hiya, by the way, like the universe is way bigger than you're supposed to. But the Cerritos is essentially kind of a task with dealing with second contact. So once like the pomp and the circumstances done the first contact, these are the guys that come after the fact and kind of do almost the paperwork is probably the best way to kind of describe it. Like they're there to do the administration side of things, which I thought was quite funny. But the series follows the Lower Decks characters, hence the title. So Lower Decks is just is essentially the term for any of the kind of sub staff. So like in Star Trek, like you'll always kind of notice that there's loads of people running about and doing things and fixing things and all the rest of it, but you never follow them. I think Voyager, if I remember rightly, I think it's an episode of Voyager, and anybody like familiar with Star Trek, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's an episode of Voyager where they actually concentrate on these so-called Lower Decks kind of like crew members. So crew members that aren't actually kind of like part of the main kind of group, because obviously the thing with kind of Star Trek shows is it always follows the command people, your captain, kind of Kirk, Picard, like Cisco, Janeway, Archer. It's always the like the main crew, and everybody else. It's always the side character. The interesting thing about Lower Decks is that the senior staff are actually, in fact, the supporting cast. Like they're there as a means to an end for the kind of lower like the Lower Decks crew. So the Lower Decks characters that we follow, there is they're all ensigns. So Beckett Mariner, Bradward Boimler, Tendi, I think her name is, and Rutherford. So two are in the kind of command type thing, the command structure, or like they're aiming to be command ones. Tendi is more of a scientist, like medical, all that kind of stuff, and Rutherford is an engineer kind of thing, who's kind of part cyborg. Tendi is Orion, and there's like a reference because obviously, like the biggest references to Orion is the Orion slave girls and stuff for the original series, that kind of thing as well. But Tendi is not. She's no either a pirate or a slave girl. She's obviously a fully kind of fleshed out member of the crew. So when it kind of kicks off, it's kind of played very kind of serious at first. So Boimler's doing like his like personal log, and does the thing where it does like whenever you kind of watch any Star Trek, you see the ship and you hear the voiceover, but then it cuts to him in a wee closet, and Beckett basically kind of like drags him into the closet and starts winding him up, kind of thing. So it's pretty much kind of like straight away you're getting a dynamic that Boimler's this kind of like he's a stuck up kind of like career driven bloke, and then you've got Beckett or Mariner as she's usually referred to as the kind of wind up merchant. Like she's just there to kind of annoy folks and kind of have a laugh and basically kind of shirk off and everything. And there's just this kind of there's this a really funny scene where she's winding him up, and she comes across a bat lift and she ends up kind of accidentally slicing his leg, and that pretty much I think sets the tone very kind of nicely for, I would probably say, the rest of the series. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as best possible, because despite the fact this is an animated show, it's actually quite kind of, there is still kind of like a lot of plot development and stuff like that as well. Excuse me. And so like it's, I don't really want to kind of go too much into like any spoiler territory, but yeah. So, for the most part, it's, as I says, it's following these kind of like these Lower Decks crew, like your grunts, kind of like your ensigns, your people on the bottom rung of the ladder, and their daily lives and how they get on with stuff, and whether or not they like. So, for example, Mariner is actually like she's quite well seasoned, but she's still an ensign. No on the level of Harry Kim, which I always thought was really hilarious in Voyager, whereby like we went through 7 seasons with the Voyager crew, and at no point, bearing in mind as well that like it seems like at least everybody in any of the Star Trek kind of universe at some point is promoted at least once to lieutenant, or like some like it's usually at least one step up kind of thing. But Ensign Harry Kim for the entirety of Voyager, start to finish, always stayed an ensign. I don't know if they refer to his rank in the last few episodes. Again, somebody can kind of tell me whether or not they actually kind of they do. But yeah, like he's never ever promoted, which I always thought was really funny. But but Mariner is kind of like she's ensign by choice. Like she's got the smart, she's got the know-how, she's pretty badass and all the rest of it, but she doesn't want to kind of like progress. She's very kind of happy where she is, because I think she thinks that where she is she can kind of do the most good. So I'll probably say your main character, like even though it's kind of really setting up to be Boimler at first, I think is Mariner. Like a lot of it kind of like focuses around her relationship with the other kind of characters as well, kind of thing, and the scrapes that she kind of gets into. So the premise of the show is so you pretty much you're following these kind of like these kind of grunts and stuff like that, whilst the main crew are actually still doing all their kind of shit. They're still kind of getting everything kind of done, but then like these over the top high sci-fi concept stuff keeps happening. Like like there's an episode where the ship gets kind of terraformed, like it gets hit by this kind of this liquid that essentially kind of like terraforms inorganic material into organic material, and so it's stuff like as much as they done their absolute kind of best and all the kind of TV shows and stuff like that. There's this element of like they can go as fantastical as they absolutely can. Like there's actually like a zombie breakout in one of the episodes as well. Like, but it's like it's space zombies, so it's kind of like it's fine. It's yeah, like it kind of touches that kind of line of genres, but like it's so kind of high concept and so over the top that they get away with quite a bit, considering the animation is like the primary kind of like it's the thing that drives the show. So they can effectively do shit that you'd never expect to kind of see in like kind of like obviously definitely not an original series or next gen, but any of them, because obviously like despite the fact that a lot of the shows were quite kind of advanced for the time. If you go back and rewatch, like for example, Deep Space Nine, all those kind of like shape changing effects are nowhere near as good as you remember when you were a kid. And like when you were a kid, you were just like, "Oh my god, that's so cool! He's all liquid and all like that thing flew through his face." And but then when you watch it again, you're like, "Oh right, okay." Model work still absolutely kind of stands up, and the makeup and everything. But anything when they start to dip into some of the CG, especially in the earlier series, it gets a wee bit kind of like a little bit ropey. Again, another thing I get to remember in the next gen, there's the episode with the game. So they've got like the headset thing on, and it's like these wee tubes are swallowing discs kind of thing, but like it's mind fucking the crew or something like that. And so like again, when I was a kid, I was like, oh my god, that looks so cool. But I remember watching it relatively recently in the last few years, and I was like, oh shit, that's no cool at all. It's really really bad looking. So yeah, there's the whole kind of like brilliance of this, and don't get me wrong, like Discovery for example looks absolutely fantastic. Some of the stuff in that you're just like holy shit, like it looks really really cool. Same with Picard as well, but like with this they can go completely and utterly over the top with the big kind of set pieces and stuff like that, but at the same time it doesn't seem like too terrible. It's like it's really kind of well done. It's quite hard to describe because like in theory it shouldn't work. You say like for example you hear about like a zombie outbreak in Star Trek, you're just like what no, like that's no my Star Trek. But please honestly take my word for it, it's definitely kind of worth watching. I've obviously got to the point whereby like I'm discussing whether or not I like it, and I do. Like I liked it start to finish. All like there's the 10 episodes that are on Amazon Prime. Like I kind of watched it relatively quickly. I don't tend to binge watch. I did up until a few years back. I'll binge watch stuff I've seen before. I'll tend to maybe kind of watch a little bit more in terms of animation or any like comedy stuff because it tends to be a lot shorter. So I'm quite happy to watch 2 or 3 episodes in a sitting. But for the most part, I'll only kind of sit and binge watch an entire show in a day anymore, unless, as I said, I have definitely seen it before. Because I feel that I don't enjoy it as much. But Lower Decks, I think I finished in the space of a week. But yeah, so a few highlights, and again, without kind of going into spoiler territory, I think without a doubt my favourite episode is Crisis Point. So it's a, and this is like I think a brilliant kind of thing about the show. So I need to kind of say that despite the fact this is a comedy, and despite the fact this pokes fun at Star Trek, it also does it in a very kind of loving a very loving way. Like it's poking fun, but it's also it's very respectful of the source material, which is a very very hard balance to get right, because you could sit there and honestly just kind of roast Star Trek till you're blue in the face and all the rest of it, and just kind of tear it a new one. It might still be funny, but the thing that this show does so well is whilst it's poking fun at everything, with references to like Q and like any of the original series and stuff like that. Like, whilst it is doing that, it's also at the same time, it's like a love letter. It's kind of like if anybody's actually kind of seen Orville, the Orville. From what I kind of seen of that, again, it was again, that was almost parody Trek, but at the same time, it was that kind of like it was Seth MacFarlane's love letter to Star Trek, which this Lord X is Star Trek's love letter to Star Trek kind of thing. So they're quite happy to take the piss, but at the same time, at a point whereby, as I say, it's no disrespectful. It's no like being nasty for the sake of it kind of thing. I think that's definitely something that benefits from this. So the reason I mentioned Crisis Point is Crisis Point is the episode in which they effectively parody the original films. Like, Mariner basically kind of like she rewrites a holodeck program that allows her to essentially play like a Star Trek movie, like an original series slash kind of next gen Star Trek film, and it's absolutely brilliant. There's bits where like the credits fly over the like so when the kind of holodeck kind of like thing starts, the credits are flying over their heads and like they're getting hit by them, just like much like again any kind of Trek film you might have kind of seen. Uh, there is an absolutely hilarious montage, like the crew going to the ship. So if you watched any of the original Trek films and stuff like that, you'll know that there's always like this kind of like almost like a I don't like, I want to say like sexual fantasy about the ship. Like there's like it shows it for all these different angles and it's all really kind of well lit and there's this kind of like powerful music score kicking and stuff like that. And like us as geeks and stuff like that, we watch it, we're just like yes kind of thing. We're loving the actual kind of like the fact that we're getting to see the ship. So it's maybe it's not as orgasmic for us, but yeah, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And they actually parody this absolutely brilliantly in the episode. There's like, as I say, there's the long drawn out shots of the ship, like the crew's kind of going towards it in slow motion. They've got the music swelling up and everything. And honestly, I was sitting there with this huge grin on my face because, as I say, I know exactly what they're parodying. It's absolutely kind of brilliant. But as I say, they're not doing it to the point whereby like it's hurtful to Trek. It's like it's like a homage, but at the same time it's like a piss take, which I think is so well balanced. So yeah, so I love like Crisis Point, definitely my favorite episode. Character wise, I think so far probably Beckett. She's probably the bit. Although I've got a lot of kind of respect for all four of them because again, is I kind of like these days that there's a lot of the kind of shows I watch, I don't tend to dislike any particular characters. I like for example, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. At first, I wasn't kind of too sure on Chelsea Peretti's character, so excuse me, Gina Linetti. I wasn't even, but again, after kind of watching that and stuff like that, I like all the characters, and the same with this. You're maybe not supposed to like Boimler as much, but at the same time you're invested, and he gets some like fairly kind of funny moments as well there. So yeah, so in case as you haven't kind of been able to tell, I'm gonna get my notes up here as well. I very much kind of enjoyed it. As I say, it's very kind of well done. So it does work like it shouldn't work. I don't think. Other vibes I've kind of getting for this as well, and I don't know if anybody would agree, but Galaxy Quest, is if anybody's ever actually sat and watched Galaxy Quest as well, again, it's quite clearly this kind of this homage slash piss take of Star Trek, and again, it's a film that kind of gets the balance absolutely kind of right. They don't refer to it as Star Trek. It's like I actually can't remember the name of the show. Which is actually like, yeah, oh no, yeah, the show I'm pretty sure is called Galaxy Quest. I'm gonna slap myself right now because that is an absolute kind of massive blunder. I can't believe I kind of forgot that. So yeah, so and Galaxy Quest is obviously their version of Star Trek. So that I like whilst watching Lower Decks, I got an awful lot of kind of vibes from Galaxy Quest. I was sitting there kind of watching. I was like, this could be like serialized Galaxy Quest, which is nothing short of like a great thing because Galaxy Quest, as I say, is absolutely hilarious as well. Now I'll probably kind of discuss this one. Is it accessible to everybody? Yes, I would probably kind of say yes. However, like if you're looking for a funny animated show, definitely get a bash kind of thing. The one thing I would probably kind of say though is if you are a fan of Star Trek, you're definitely going to enjoy this a lot more because you're going to get way more. You're going to get a lot of the kind of references and stuff like that. Now, this is the thing, like, as much as I like Star Trek, I don't think I am anywhere near as much like a Trek fan as like some of my friends, for example. One friend in particular, who I always refer to as my weird Star Trek mate, like he's one of these guys that can kind of see like a random extra in a TV series and go, that's that guy for the who was a Cardassian in episode 405 of kind of Deep Space Nine. You're like, how the fuck do you, what? Like, so yeah, so this is the same guy that came with me to see Green Room specifically because Patrick Stewart was in it. So yeah, he's my weird Star Trek mate. But so I suspect that like a guy like him will definitely get way more out of it than I have, and I've got a lot of it kind of thing. So it's fairly accessible. But as I say, if you're a Star Trek person, you're a Star Trek fan, you're a Star Trek geek, you're a trekker, a Trekkerino, like whatever the hell they're called, because I know like, up until recently I didn't even know the difference between a Trekkie and a Trekker, but I think I'm definitely on the Trekker side because I don't kind of dress up and like what have you. I think that was the difference. But anywho, I think you will definitely get more out of it if you are invested in the shows. But that's not to say that you can't actually kind of watch it and enjoy the kind of ridiculousness of the situations and stuff like that. But even then, it might even be like your gateway drug into Star Trek. You might go, what are they talking about? Who's that Q character? Like, I'd like to kind of find out more about this and stuff like that. So yeah. The voice cameos are really good as well. Obviously I mentioned Q, and Q is actually kind of voiced by John Delancey, which is just absolutely kind of brilliant. That's as much as I'll mention. But yeah, absolutely kind of brilliant there. Another kind of standard character is Badgie, but again, I'm not actually going to like any further reference to Badgie, because I kind of want you to see what he's all about as well there. So again, just bringing up my notes, and again, it's a Star Wars book just to kind of wind the folks up there as well. So will I watch more? Yes. I mean, like, bottom line is I am going to keep watching this. I think it's something that's quite interesting, it's quite unique, and to see the kind of new Star Trek shows, which, as I say, I am very much enjoying. This is something completely and utterly left field, and a few of my kind of mates who have kind of recommended it to me, I was kind of like, really? All right, cool. And I wasn't kind of completely adverse to kind of watching it. Like, it's one of these things whereby I've always got like a huge back catalogue of TV shows going on at any one time. And so I wasn't adverse to kind of watching it. It was on my list to watch, but it was a few kind of folks that kind of suggested that, well, why don't you kind of do Lower Decks for Geek Waffle episode 4? So yes, I did. So yeah, I don't think there's really kind of much more I kind of want to go through. I really like the animation style. I think, as it says, I've probably mentioned it about 50 times now, but I think it's so well balanced to the point whereby, as it says, it's a homage, but a piss take on one, but then doesn't seem like overly disrespectful, but then doesn't seem overly out there. It could pretty much, if it was live action, it could probably kind of still kind of work. It probably, I think, would lose. I don't think it would be as funny, and it definitely wouldn't be able to kind of do any of the high concept Star Trek stuff that they managed to get away with. As cool as it would be to see some of that stuff in live action, but like, you're talking probably movie budgets to look at it for some of the stuff that actually kind of happens to the ships and stuff like that as well. I would also kind of recommend, this is kind of going to be a little bit of a segue here, just before I kind of wrap up, but in the age of streaming, I don't really kind of get this kind of need to kind of skip intro. It's something that's actually kind of wound me up quite a bit. Especially, I've been rewatching Lost, and which coincidentally is going to be my next episode. But it's one of these things where, like, for example, the opening to Lost is less than 20 seconds long, and there's a button to skip the intro. So I did get that. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I actually think the intro is brilliant. Again, if you watch any of the kind of series, especially for Deep Space Nine onwards. Like the intros got very cinematic, because the original series was just like like the do 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 do, and the ship kind of flying past and stuff like that. And then Next Gen was just like the titles, I think, flying up on the screen. And again, I think you actually got a wee bit more, like I think the ship kind of flew past as well. But then for Deep Space Nine onwards, like it kind of done this whole thing where you went around the kind of like the space station, and as it kind of like progressed like through the seasons, there would either be guys kind of working on the upper pylons, and then Voyager was like, you know, it's flying through space, and it was like it's mirrored off the top of like some rings and stuff like that, and all this kind of. So yeah, so they very well, they parody the Star Trek opening very well in Lower Decks as well, which is something I don't skip, because I think it's hilarious. But yeah, so in summary, because I waffled quite a bit, which is great because that's the actual title of this show. Lower Decks, definitely worth a watch. Very accessible, I think, in general, but if you are a Star Trek fan, you're going to like it way more than you would if you are not. Animation's really cool, characters really funny, definitely can watch more, and I very much like the fact that it is like there's cameos and all that kind of stuff as well. It's very, very enjoyable. So yeah, and breathe. So as I said, next episode is going to be on Lost. I'm rewatching it, but a friend of mine has actually kind of watched it for the first time ever and managed to avoid everything about it, like spoilers, stuff like that. So it's going to be quite interesting to speak to someone who's only just watched it. So I'm going to have a wee conversation. So I'll be talking from the perspective of somebody that's actually kind of sat and watched it a few times, and she'll be kind of obviously like Lost kind of newbie kind of thing. Thank you very much for watching Geek Waffle episode 4, which I'm naming Low Hanging Decks because I'm hilarious. But if you're enjoying this, please let me know. Wee comments, very kind of nice. A like is also very much appreciated. But yeah, thank you very much for listening to me waffle a pish. And I'll speak to you again.